This is a podcast about our lived experience, which unfortunately includes infant death and subsequent mental health struggles. Please take good care of yourself and only listen if this content feels safe for you right now. We'll still be here when you're ready.
Hi, I'm Judith.
And I'm Melina. We are internet friends turned real-life friends who both experienced the tragic loss of our sons to sudden infant death syndrome in winter of 2021.
In the year after Aiden died, my husband and I both became unemployed. My parents divorced, and we had to move 5 times for various reasons.
And as for me, just a few weeks before my son Quinn died, my then husband had come out to me as a transgender woman and were subsequently divorcing.
It's been a lot.
It's been a lot.
But as long as we're living, we will love our sons deeply and work to make sure that we live a life that makes them proud.
Welcome to As Long As I'm Living podcast.
We're so glad you're here.
Hello. Alina here from As Long As I'm Living podcast, recording for you while we're on a break. This week, our little episode highlights are going to be centered on the episodes where we've recorded with professionals. So Judith and I, we are professionals at our own grief. We are definitely not professional podcasters, but we are not really professionals at everything. We kind of are professionals at our own grief, but certainly not professional podcasters. And we are certainly not experts on SIDS, grief, or anything like that. So if you're looking for voices of professionals, I've got the episodes for you. First up, I'm going to have you listen to Empty Arms, an interview with Carol McMurrick. So Carol is a support group leader. She founded an organization called Empty Arms after the death of her daughter, Charlotte. They provide grief support for people experiencing stillbirth, infant loss, miscarriage. They actually go into the hospital with folks who are experiencing a stillbirth or an infant loss to provide support for them in that time. And she has a wealth of knowledge for how to care for the newly bereaved. So that is a fantastic episode for someone who is a grief supporter looking for words from an expert. Next, I'm going to link you to our interviews with Dr. Rick Goldstein of the Roberts Program. We have one called SIDS, and that is our SIDS specific episode. If you are wondering about SIDS, what causes it, how to prevent it, what they are doing to stop it, this is the episode for you. He is an absolute wealth of knowledge on this topic. He is literally at the forefront of this field. It's a fantastic episode. I think it will comfort bereaved parents, even though obviously we're all terrified, but I think he does a really good job explaining everything in a way that's not too terrifying. We also have an interview with him called Parental Grief. In addition to being a SIDS researcher, he actually also does research on bereaved parents in general, on things like babies who died, bereaved parents in general, for people whose kids died of things other than SIDS. So that episode is just super validating. He has the kindest, most compassionate heart for those of us who are grieving a baby that is no longer in our family. I think that one will just feel and sound like a big hug from a professional. He has like the best bedside manner. Like, it's just a delight. Next, I'm going to talk about our episode with Rebecca Manini. She is my EMDR therapist. So that one's called All About EMDR. EMDR is a trauma treatment modality. It is used to kind of help you process those really horrific memories that keep flashing into your brain in the middle of the night or during the day or while you're doing laundry or driving or whatever. We've all been there. Baby loss is traumatic. In addition to just being grief, it is also traumatic grief. And she talks about the process of EMDR. She talks about grief therapy and trauma therapy, how they differ. And it's just a really interesting topic on a type of therapy that I think most of us have probably heard of, but maybe a lot of us haven't tried. So I personally highly recommend EMDR. And if you're curious about that at all, go ahead and listen to that episode. It's called All About EMDR, an interview with Rebecca Manini. And the last 2 episodes I'm going to link are with our resident grief therapist, Dr. Denise Mandel. You all love Dr. Denise, and so do we. The first one we released last summer, it's called Grief Needs a Witness. Dr. Denise has been a grief counselor for years and years and years and years. She's also a bereaved parent herself, and she has such lovely things to say. I know she takes her role as a grief therapist really seriously. She knows she's the witness to someone's grief. And she has wonderful words of comfort, advice. We actually loved her first interview so much that we invited her on again. That episode was actually released very recently. It's called There Are No Silver Linings. So that's our second follow-up episode with Dr. Denise. So I will link all of those in the description. If you haven't listened to any of those, I highly, highly recommend. I'm realizing I forgot probably the most professional of the professionals, Dr. Laura Arling. She's a pediatrician, and she talked all about what it looks like to parent your baby after your baby dies. So there's a lot in that episode that I think was really interesting. She also touched on SIDS because we specifically asked her, but really more about that is just like parenting a rainbow baby. If you agree with that term or not, that is what a lot of people call them. So I forgot about that episode, but that's our last Hear from the Pros episode. Okay, speaking of things to listen to, if you've already listened to all those, I'm going to link instead another podcast for you to listen to. And this week, I'm going to link The Silent Why. So I mentioned that Judith and I are not professional podcasters. Well, The Silent Why, they are also not professional podcasters, but you would not know it because their podcast is beautifully produced. The sound quality, so crisp compared to ours, especially. But Claire and Chris Santis take this really seriously. They are trying to find hope and healing in 101 types of loss. So that could be something as simple as, I say simple, it sucks, losing a pet. Something as it could be something as common, albeit as heartbreaking as losing a pet. They also interviewed somebody who lost their skin. They've interviewed, somebody on the loss of the climate. They have a lot of really interesting, varied types of losses. And the episode I'm going to link for you is Loss of a Family, starring me, Alina. I went on their podcast this time last year, and it was a really wonderful experience. I still think back to that recording and think, gosh, I got to be more professional like Chris and Claire. But anyway, so here's their little blurb. Can hope be found in every type of loss? Join Claire Santis and sometimes Chris, a childless couple not by choice, on a mission to find 101 different types of loss to see if it's possible to find hope or even joy in every type of grief. So I will link that in the description as well. And we will see you soon. Bye.
To all of our wonderful new friends, we want to hear from you. Email us at aslongasimlivingpodcast@gmail.com and follow us on Instagram at aslongasimlivingpodcast. We'll get back to you as soon as our grieving brains allow. Yay!